Okay, so today's daf is daf Tazayim. Yesterday, at the end of the day, we learned about how in the Midbar, when they had the mun, they didn't need any way of being mavar, who was right and who was wrong. The mun was the best litmus test of them all. So we learned about this klicheres that they used to fill up with water. We learned where they got their earth from. So now we have a klicheres with earth, and we'll see what happens next. So the Gemara was discussing where we get this earth from. So we had two shitas. We had one shita is that there was a stone, a marble tile in the heichal that they picked up and they got earth from underneath it. And it says Asher Yisham, and it says Bekarka Mishkan. So we learn that if they could find earth underneath that marble tile, they use it. If not, they bring earth from the outside. And then we had a dissenting opinion. We had our Tanya Yidich, who said that regardless, you bring the earth from the outside. So what do we learn from the words Bekarka Mishkan? We learned that Isi ben Yehuda Omer lahavi karka shiloi noiv v'givain ubeis olamim. And Rashi changes the girsa. Rashi says noiv v'givain. Rashi takes out of the girsa. So let's see Rashi. Isi ben Yehuda Omer lahavi karka beis olamim. Notice he takes out noiv and givain. Hachi garsin labas are free. V'loi garas. L'rabbi Shiloi v'noi v'givain ubeis olamim. The Shiloi Mishkanu. Shiloi was a Mishkan. That's exactly what the pasuk is talking about. The Karka Mishkan. The Noiv Givain in Noiv and Givain, which were Bamos, ein Mashkim Basaitais. There they weren't matched. They didn't do the process of Saita. Noiv and Givain, the Bamavoy. Those are Bamos. There was no Oren there. All there was the mizbech and the choishes, and therefore they never brought a mincha saita there. Nor were they able to bring any chaybis yachid she'ein lezman kavua. So the only type of karbanos they brought were things that are zman kavua, like the tamid, the korban pesach, kedama b'shudas kachim with megillah. Aval beis ha'ilamim. But we do need a prophet to tell us that in the Beis HaMikdash they were able to do the soita process. Hutzich l'rabbi shaloi toimar mishkan nemar v'loi mikdash. Zok Rashi Beis HaMikdash Yerushalayim, our Beis HaMikdash kari loy Beis Elamim. That's what the Gemara is referring to. That's what the Bryce is referring to. When it says Beis Elamim, why was it called the Beis Elamim, the forever bias? Levishein achar kedushasei hetem b'makam achar. Once the Beis HaMikdash was built, there was never any other place where they were allowed to bring karbanos. And after that point, there was never Hashras HaShechina anywhere else. Zok Tehelige Tosfos argues on Rashi, and Tosfos says, Rashi goes Lavi Karka Beis Elamim, the Shibesh HaGirsa. Rashi made the Girsa into a mistake. He said it was a mistake. He took out Noiv Givain. The Shibesh HaGirsa Shiloi Noiv Givain. We should know the Noiv Givain in Mashkim Basaitais. Why? Should have a minchas yachid she'ein kvulas man. V'tema fragt Tosfos shipsa mishum koshezu. Why would Rashi have changed the girsa because of this kasha? Dilma kasaver Isi ben Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe Isi ben Yehuda learned like Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar v'perik baso the shchitas kachim that kol shat tzibur v'yachid makrivin b'oil moed shebemidbar makrivin b'oil moed shebegilgal. Maybe he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that all of the public bamos, like Noiv and Givain, you were allowed to bring all karbanos in. V'loy chiluk b'yachid ele bamas yachid. The bamas yachid is where you couldn't bring karbanos, but the bama of the tzibur, the bama gedola, there you were allowed to bring karbanos, even the mincha saita. The bamas yachid sheberish gagoy, that you weren't allowed to. In fact, there they were allowed to bring the minchas saita. So it seems like there's a machlekes between Rashi and Tosfos if we could have been gurious noiv and givain. I don't need a pasuk. I don't need a pasuk to teach you that you could bring the minchas saita in the Beis HaMikdash. Uma betumakala loy chilek hakasav madich by a tumakala. What is a tumakala? Hard to believe. Likanes betumas aguf mikdash. we consider going in when you're Tameh into the base of Mikdash, that's Tumakala. You know why? You don't get Mises Besin for going into the base of Mikdash when you're Tameh. Ela Kares, it's a mere Kares. There Lechalak HaKasav Bein Mikdash LeMishkan. The Torah says, the Torah does not make a difference between the Mishkan and the base of Mikdash. Shenemar b'Parshas Paraduma Shnei Psukim. This case, Mikdash Hashem Timei and Mishkan Hashem Timei. So Lagabe the Isurim of going into the Mishkan and base of Mikdash when you're Tameh, there's no difference. So B'Tumas Eishish Chamura, which invokes a Chiv Chenek, it's his nus. Clearly, surely you should be able to bring those in the base of Mikdash, even though the pasuk says Mishkan. So what do we learn out of the pasuk Bekarka Mishkan in the pasuk by Sotah? That you shouldn't bring mitoich kupasai. In other words, you shouldn't bring l'soich kli v'yachmas la'echol elamikaki isa yitor, like the first shot. V'im ein sham, unless there is no earth underneath that tile, then yavi v'yaniach sham v'yachach yitlan. So therefore, v'niskai mesher, meaning if you have to bring there, niskai b'karka, if you found there, you get it from the karka mitzvah. The machlokes is if you have to first try to get earth from that's located underneath that tile, or if the you should bring earth from somewhere else and bring it into the heichal. Our very first people was that you have to take it from the heichal. But a second people that said that you bring it from anywhere. And in the second sheet that we brought, which is Isa ben Yehuda, the Brisa also quotes in Isa ben Menachem, who holds up our foot. That l'chatchila you have to find it from underneath the tile. If you can't find it, like the Gemara said earlier, ein sham, tein sham. You don't find it, bring it. Yibayilu click the marashai. What happens if there's ein sham offer? Offer means earth. Mao sheet and afer. Are you allowed to use ashes? Avram Avinu said, "Vanoichi offer be'efer." What is the significance of offer, and what is the significance of efer? So the Mefarshim tell us that offer is earth. Offer is nothing now, but it could become something. You could plant in it, and you could grow things. You could make it into bricks. You could make it into building material. It doesn't have a present, but it has a future. Afer is ash. It once was something significant, but it was burnt down. So Afer has a past, but it doesn't have a present or a future. So when Avram Avinu says, "Vanoichi offer be'efer," basically what he said is, I'm a has-been that never was. I once met a very depressed man, and he told me, Zalman, I'm a has-been that never was. Right, that's what it means. I don't have a past and I don't have a future. I'm a nothing. So it says in the schus that Avram Avinu said, "Vanoichi offer be'efer," he was zoicha to Parah Aduma, the Efer of Parah Aduma, and the offer of Sotah. So the Mefarshim tell us, I think the Meshachachmo says, but I'm not sure. Mefarshim tell us in the schus that he said offer, meaning I don't have a past. He was zoicha to the offer of Sotah, which clarifies the past, tells us if she's told me or not. And in the schus that he said Vanoichi Efer, we're zoicha to Parah Aduma, which renews us and makes us tar for the future. So Zok to Gemara. This is the shiloh that we have. I don't know. Yeah. Correct to Gemara. Alibu to Beishamai. According to Beishamai, loyti b'ayla. The army lo metzinu efer shekari off. Now there was a machlokes Beishamai and Basil by Kisu Yadam. The halach is if you shech a chaya or an oif, the Torah says you have to cover over its blood. So what we do is we allow the bleeding to bleed on earth, and then you cover it over with it. And there's a shaila if you can use ashes as well for kisur adam. So Beishamai says, you cannot use ashes instead of earth for kisur adam. But Kisi Boila Khaliba de Basil, who by Kisi Adam says that an afer can be used in lieu of offer. The army Matini afer shakara. So according to Basil, who by Kisi Adam says that you can use ash in lieu of earth, what would Allah be by a soita? Do you say Afal Gav the Ikri Afar? Even thank you so much. According to Basil, where Afer by Tizadam works instead of Afar. Maybe here, like Sotah, it's more stringent because Hacha Bakaka Mishkan said it says Kaka Mishkan, and Rashi says from the Kroy Yisrael from the extra passage of Kaka Mishkan. Maybe it tells us that it has to be Afar B'Dafka because it's from the Kaka the Mishkan. The Kaka of the Mishkan you'll find earth, not ashes. Idilma Hai Bakaka Mishkan is L'chad Isi ben Yehuda or L'chad Isi ben Menachem Udas. We had two limudim. Isi ben Yehuda learned Kaka Mishkan to tell you that even in the base of Mikdash they did the process of Sotah, and Isi ben Menachem said that from Kaka Mishkan you learn that the Chatchila you're supposed to get it from the Kaka Mishkan. If not, you bring it. So maybe you could use Afer ash instead of Afar to mix with the water with a Maimam or Rimamasai. Dr. Martashma, maybe we could bring the rod. The Amr of Yochanan Mishum Rav Yishmael. The Shloisha Mekaymas in three places, halacha l'Moshe Sinai, Keves Mikra, trumps what it seems to say in the book. It's not really a steer, it's more of a clarification. HaTorah Amar Ba'opa. The Torah says, Bakisa Adam, you should cover the dam of the Chaya or the oil with earth. The halacha b'chol davar, and there's halacha l'Moshe Sinai that says that you can use anything, and anything means Dr. Rashi hamagadol tzmachim, anything that can grow if you will plant in it. Goyin hanir v'asarnayich v'asid v'chash sulvena shikocha, ground bricks, anything that would foster growth if you planted a seed in it. I remember when we were in elementary school, we would plant beans in wet paper towel. Remember those experiments? We would plant a bean in wet paper towel. Remember, like grade 1, grade 2. In Yitzchayim, they had more sophisticated science here, but we were a little bit more tzaddik. We planted beans in paper towel. Zog to Gemara. Or HaTorah Amar B'Tar. This we're familiar with. The Torah says by a Nazir, Tar lo Yovel Roisha. V'Halacha B'Chol Dover. But Halacha l'Moshe Sinai tells us, as Rashi says, Nazir Shegilach Bein Bezuk Sai with the scissor, Bein B'Tar Sai with the razor, or Shesif Sai Kolshu, or he ripped out his hair. Either way, it will be Chayim. So Rashi asks right over here, when is the Torah trumping? When the Torah is going against what it says in the Torah. With the halacha machine, with the halacha Moshe Sinai is trumping what it says in the Torah. So if the Torah says Mekisa Adam with earth, and the halacha Moshe Sinai says use anything, so there's trumping because it's saying you don't have to use this, you can use that. But if the Torah is answering kahar and the halacha Moshe Sinai adds isurim to it, that's not called trumping it. That's just adding isur. Zokt Rashi a gavalta gavar. Zokt Rashi, you would get malchus. You would get malchus if a Nazir cuts his hair with any one of the additional isurim provided by the halacha Moshe Sinai, he would get malchus. The Torah says there's a law to give someone pech. You're not allowed to give malchus to somebody who's not entitled to malchus. So the Torah, the halacha Moshe Sinai is trumping the Torah because the Torah says don't give somebody malchus if he doesn't deserve it. Yet halacha Moshe Sinai says a Nazir who cuts his hair with the scissors also gets malchus. And the third example is a Torah Amar Sefer. When someone wants to give a get, it says you should write her a Sefer. The chos of law Sefer krisos. So you would think it has to be written b'dafka on parchment. Halacha b'chol davar, you can even write it on a leaf. You can write the get on any. Gemara, you're clearing the shaila if afer ashes can be used for the offer of a Sotah. If you hold that you can use afer for the offer of a Sotah, lachshay binami hi. So why doesn't Rabbi Shmuel list this as another example? The fourth example where the halacha Moshe Sinai would trump what it says in the Torah. It says in the Torah offer, and the halacha Moshe Sinai trumps it and says afer is good as well. So we have to analyze this a second, because according to the shaila that the Gemara asked, the Gemara said, according to Beis Hillel, we have a shaila. Because Beis Hillel said that when it says offer, it means afer as well. If when the Torah says offer, the Torah means afer as well, that's not a halacha Moshe Sinai trumping the Torah. That's shot in the post. So the Rishonim learn that the more here is saying, if you're going to learn even according to Beis Shammai, who holds that offer doesn't mean Efer, but the Halacha L'Moshe Messina says that Efer would be good anyway, that's what we're trying to say. If you're going to learn like Beis Shammai, that the Halacha L'Moshe Messina does not say offer, but the Torah doesn't say Efer. The Torah says upper, and the Halacha L'Moshe Messina says that Efer is good anyway. So why doesn't it list this case Sotah as an example? And it should be Arba Mekaymis Halacha Keves Mit. Dr. Gemara Elamai, it must be that Efer does not work. Dr. Gemara, no, maybe Efer does work, but the Tana didn't list off every example. The Torah left out this example. Tana V'Shayir, the Tana left out the example of Sotah. But really, the Tana holds that by Sotah as well, the Efer works. But we know there's a rule that the Tana never omits just one item. The Tana always has to omit a second item. Uma Shire, the high Shire. What other item in the list do you see that the Halacha L'Moshe Messina trumps what it says in the Torah, that the Mishnah also, that the Brisa also omitted? The Gemara Shire Mitzayir. Mitzayir is another example of where a Halacha L'Moshe Messina trumps what it says in the Tanya. It says there are two tagalachas that a Mitzayir gets. Remember, he gets the tagalachas when he first finds out that he's Torah, and then 7 days later he gets another tagalachas. So it says in the pasuk, this is referring to the second taglach. And if you darshan the pasuk, normally this is what you would conclude. Yigalach has called sorry is a klal. Es roishoy veskanoi veskabes einav are a prat. Ves called sorry yigaleach is chazav a kol. So the normal way to understand this pasuk would be klal pratu klal I atadon alakena prat. And what would we say? Ma prat mefurish mokam kinusar, just like the prat, which is roisha is kana and gabisain of our places where there's clusters of hair. Unlike, let's say, the hair on your arm, where it's not a cluster. Other places on your body would be a cluster of hair and veneer, and it's a cluster that can be seen. Palamaka kinusar, any place on your body where there's a cluster of hair, veneer, and it's visible, would be places that have to be cut during the second taglach. My Rabbi, what are we adding in addition to the three pratim? Rabbi Sir HaRaglayim. Sir HaRaglayim is a nice way of saying the Mokam Erev. There is a clump of hair there, and it's visible, of course, when you're in the mikvah. But ma miyat the base of shechin, your underarm hair, you're standing straight. People can't see the hair under your arms. So that's what it's going to be the ma'it, because it's not visible. Or the chulagufe, because it's not clustered, it's just hair growing out of your arm. So that's what we would understand from the pashas of the pasuk. But the hilchasa, we know halacha l'Moshe Messinai migaleich kidalas. You give him a Gillette tattoo over his entire body. How did you know that? It's not. We have another mishnah. When you do the first taglachas of the mitzayir, mavir tar al kol b'sar. He gets a Gillette tattoo over his whole body. The Katani Sefer, and the Sefer of this price says, and 7 days later, which is the second taglachas, which we learned a moment ago from a klal prat to klal, does not include the whole body, because it excludes hair from all over his body, it excludes the hair of his underarm. But the price says beferish, migalchoy taglachas shniya ki taglachas rishoyna. The let track do everywhere. Where do you get it from? It must be Halacha L'Moshe Messinai. So if it's Halacha L'Moshe Messinai, why doesn't the Brisa list that as an example of where the Halacha L'Moshe Messinai trumps the Torah? Alamai, it's a talk of the Shire, it's left over. What else does the Torah leave out? That kind of mention the Efer that would be good for the Mesoitis. But we have to understand here again, we have the same question. Why is this leaving out? The Torah says you have to cut all these places. The Halacha L'Moshe Messinai says cut more places. That's not going to get clear. That's adding, right? So, and here there's no isser involved, right? There's no isser to cut those parts of your body. So let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says, Shar Mitzayir. So Rashi is on the second wide line.
The taglach hashniya. The hu tzara shnei taglachos. A mitzvah needs two taglachos. The chsiv v'chibes hamitarish begodo. The hoya b'yom hashvi galachas kol sorah. The taglachas rishona by the first taglachas loy kosav klalu prat klal. It doesn't have any klalu prat klal to darken. Ella is kol sairoi stam. It just says you got to cut all his hair, which means literally all his hair. The mashma kol gufa Israel Aisha b'shuka b'beis everything. She called gufay chalak in the last. The whole body should be smooth like a glory. With taglacha shnia kosav b'klal prat. Dafka but taglacha shnia with their klal prat. The mashma mokan kinu sar. She heisham kibut ser harbe lemut Israel Aisha b'shuka b'shein mechunis. The nira lemut b'sheki. It's also the lemut b'sheki. Sarah glai mashes the Aisha makam. The lishna mal yasa makam. Allah megalech kulak in the glass. After the glacha shnia katani the megalech kol gufoy. I'm going to just skip a little bit. Megalchoi taglacha shnia kedaglacha rishona. Below your sin in the gachenu which is the lashna pasuk la rekrokoi alashna mishnah umegalchoi taglacha shnia kedaglacha rishona number almo nia nami kedaglas. Katani le bedaglacha rishona ma birsar al kol yisor. So the question here is, this is not an isser. This is not an isser. So how is this trumping? So let me see if we can find a teretz for that. Dr. Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Dr. Rav Nachman Yitzchak, that's not, the Tzorah is not a good example of a case where the halacha l'Moshe Sinai trumps the pasuk. You know what? Because kika chashiv halacha akeves mita, hacha akeves midiravonim. Here, the halacha l'Moshe Sinai is not trumping a daraisa. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai is trumping a deravonim. What do you mean trumping a deravonim? We learned out of a klal, pratu klal, that midaraisa you only cut those parts of the body. So what do you mean it's trumping a derabana? Because of that, the Maritz Chai says, oh, there's actually a printing mistake in our Gemara. And it shouldn't say midrabanan, it should say midrasha. And the Gemara is saying, is the Baal, this is not the flourish of the pasuk. Rather, it's only learned out of a klal, prato klal. That's not what Rabbi Shmuel is listing. Rabbi Shmuel is only listing with a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. He's directly trumping something that's before the Torah, not something that's learned out of a drasha. And he says that it probably said mem dalad reish with a little shtechel, which would mean midrasha, and someone misunderstood it as midrabana. The Maritz Chizal being a riot, because if it was derabana, it should have said ha akeves derabana, not midrabana. So it must mean that it's midrash. Why didn't they fix it? I don't know. That's a good question. I guess they're doing the building the shops. No, I still have a little bit of a problem. Is why is that called? Why Bechal is called trumping, telling you to take off more hair than irregular? So I'm not sure of the answer to that question, because I know for sure by the tar by Nazir, it's a question of a lot. But it doesn't. I don't know if Rashi directly addresses the case of Mitzorah. I'm sorry. So we're back to the same question. That's right. So at the end of the day, if we have a shtickle raya, that Aether, in fact, will not work. Because if it would work, it's a case of halacha l'Moshe Sinai trumping a deraisa. Although it's not really a right, because the Shiloh is really according to Beis Hillel, although an offer could mean Aether, and we're sort of twisting it and making it to halacha l'Moshe Sinai, which would be according to the Shammai. So it's really inconclusive. The Gemara has another reason why Mitzorah isn't a good raya of another example of a halacha l'Moshe Sinai trumping a halacha in the Torah. Why? Because Papa Amar Kika Chashiv halacha akeves v'aikeres ha akeves u'misah. So this is what I was alluding to before. Here it's not being oiker davar sheb'Torah. The Torah says shave 4 spots, and the halacha of Rav Sinai is saying shave every spot. So it's not really the Torah, the halacha of Rav Sinai Trump. It's not a good example. The Ashi Amar, there's another reason why it's not a raya. Because we brought down earlier the limud of klal prat klal, which will tell us that the second taglachas is only on certain areas of the body. Then we still too at the Tanan that said that the second taglachas is the same as the first taglachas. Who said both these brises were spoken by the same person? Rav Yomar Hamani Hamas Nisan Mani Rabbi Shmuel. The brisa is going, the first brisa that says that you don't shave the whole body, it's going according to Shmuel, the Darsh Poli Prati, and using the klal prat, not the whole body, you shave it, because you don't shave the base of Shafi, you don't shave other hair on the body, that's not clumped together. And the second Mishnah
that we quoted, that says that the second taglachas is a complete Gillette track too, like a gourd, smooth like a gourd all over. Mani Rabbi Kivi, that might be going according to Rabbi Kiva, the Dorish Ribu Mayuti. So in fact, nobody holds that there's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai trumping a pasuk. There's just a shayla how to learn the pasuk. According to Rabbi Shmuel, you learn the pasuk to exclude the base of shechi, and according to Rabbi Kiva, you learn it to include the base of shechi. The Tanya, Vayabiyah Mashvi Yagalach Eskol Sa'aroi Riba, Es Roisha Veskona Viskabes Einov Miet, Eskol Sa'aroi Yagaleach Chaz of Riba. Riba Umit Riba Akol. My Riba, the Kula Gufe, the hair of his whole body has to be cut. My Miut, Seir Shabesoicha Choitim. The nose hairs, that's the only thing that you don't have to cut. The thing that my kids harass me that I forget to shave sometimes. Okay. So that's the machlokes. I just want to point out an interesting Rashi who talks about the source of this machlokes as to how you darsham psukim. Do you use a riboy meat for riboy, or do you use a klal prato klal? So if we look at the bottom Rashi on Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph, Rashi just gives us a little bit of background. The Dorish kolatar kula b'chlalu prat kidarmina b'shvuos b'per gimel Rabbi Shmuel Shimes as Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. So the source of klal pratu klal is Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, and Rabbi Shmuel just took the position of his Rebbe, so Yidarish is kol atayr b'chlalu pratu. Rabbi Kiva Shimish es Nochamish Gamzu, and Nochamish Gamzu had the approach of riboy meat riboy. So the source of this machlokes is Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana holds klal pratu klal, and Nochamish Gamzu holds riboy miut riboy. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. My Havala. So Zogt Rashi, my Havala, the body in the we had a question before, in ancient offer, if you didn't have earth for the Mesaita, Mao Shayitain Shamefer. Can you use ashes? Zogt Gemara Toshma. Let's have a look. The Omar Rav Huna by Ashi Omar Rav. Ancient offer, if you don't have earth, maybe Rakrubis Yerek Umakadej. You can use anything. What is a Rakrubis Yerek? You can use rotted vegetables. So any deteriorated carbon, anything you can use for the site of water. So you have a raya that Afer would work. Dr. Mar, you don't have a raya that Afer would work. V'loi, Rakrubis Yerek, who to have a offer. Rakrubis of Yerek, it's disintegrated plant matter that could be considered like earth. Afer is ash; it's a completely different thing. Lo have offer, lav da'afka would that be considered offer, and therefore we still have an unresolved shaila whether or not you can use afer for the pieces of saitan. Green mean you can use. Okay, now we up to the next sugya. The Mishnah says you have to put enough earth on this ma'im chayim that it would be visible that there's earth there. So the Gemara focuses on mitzvahs that have to be visible. Tanu Rabbanan, Shloisha Tzrichin Sheyiru. There's 3 mitzvahs in the Torah that require that you should be able to see it. Offer Saita, like we just looked at our Mishnah, the earth that you pour into the water has to be visible. The Efer Para, the ash of the Para Aduma that you put into the Mayim Chaim as well, it has to be visible. The Roikivama, and when a woman does Chalitza, her saliva has to be visible. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amru, in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, they said, Af Dam Tzipar. The halacha is when we do the process of Taharis HaMitzayra, it says, Rashi says, Sheshoichtoi al Chlicheres al Mayim Chaim. You shecht the tzipar into a Chlicheres where there's Mayim Chaim in it. The tzarech shelo yitin Mayim el Kashir, Shehedam Tzipar Nikar Behed. There cannot be too much water in there that you won't be able to tell that there's blood. Now, Tosfos has a big ha'ara over here. Because Tosfos asks, I don't understand. Even a drop of blood will create a discoloration. So there can be tons more water and you still will know that there's blood. So Tosfos says it's not enough just to see a little bit of red. You have to be able to recognize a certain thickness that there's actually blood there, not just a reddish tinge. Dr. Gemara, my time with Rabbi Shmuel, what's the svar of Rabbi Shmuel, who argues at the Chachamim and say that by Dam Tzipar, the blood has to be noticeable. With the Rabbanan hold, it does not have to be visible. The Chsiv, it says by the parsha of Taharis HaMitzayra, the Tov Aloisam, the Dam HaTzipar, and let's have a look at the Psukim inside because it will make a very big difference. So let's look at the Psukim inside. We're going to be focusing on them quite a bit. It says, as a Tzipar Achaya, you should take the Tzipar Achaya. Ves Eitza Eres, the Shnia Telas, Ezov. The Tov Aloisam, you should dip them in. Ves a Tzipar Achaya, and the Tzipar Achaya, the Dam HaTzipar HaShechuta, in the dam of the Tzipar HaShechuta, Al HaMayim HaChaim. Before this pasuk, the pasuk immediately before this pasuk that I just read, says, V'tziva HaKoyen, V'shochet es HaTzipar HaEchos, El Kli Cheres, Al Mayim Chaim. So, we're going to learn from these psukim that the dam has to be visible. It says v'tov aloisam v'dam atzipar, and we learn you have to tovel the tzipar achaya with the eitzeres ve'ezoid in the dam atzipar, and we learn from there that it has to be visible. The dam atzipar to tell you that it's visible. V'tani we learn v'dam yochal v'dam v'loy b'mayim. You might think you tovel it in pure dam, not in water. Talmud Loimer Mayim. The Bach takes out the word beis because it's referring to the pasuk that says Hamayim. It says al Hamayim Achayim. So it's that Hamayim that we're referring to in this limud. Imayim, if it says Mayim, Yochal b'Mayim v'loy b'dam. Maybe you only tovel this in water, not in dam. Talmud Loimer b'dam, which it says in the earlier pasuk. Haketzat. Maybe mayim shedam tzipar nikar behen. Bring water where it's obvious that there's dam tzipar in it, and that's what you use. Vikama, what is the shear of water that you could mix the dam of the tzipar into, where the water won't dilute the dam to the point where it's not nikar? So to Gemara, revius. Revius is the maximum amount of water you can use when you're diluting the bird's blood. So you might ask me, what do you mean? You have a bigger bird, you have a smaller bird. So the Gemara is going to answer that question. But we're talking about a bird that can handle up to a revius of mayim without being diluted. Now the Rabbanan hold that over there's no problem of being diluted. But in Mitzayra, it doesn't matter if the dam is diluted, it's not nikar. Because the Rabbanan said there's only 3 items, not 4 items. So what do they do with these psukim which seem to indicate that the dam has to be visible? Rabbanan hula gufei. You need the pasuk to tell you the base halacha. I wouldn't have known that you have to toivel into the mixture of dam and mayim. In order for me to know that that's what you're supposed to do, the Torah has to say mayim and dam. Otherwise, how do I know you need both there? Rabbi Shmuel, no, I would know that anyway. Im Kain, if all the Torah wanted to tell you is that you need both there, lichter b'chman v'tov al behem. The Torah just say v'tov al behem. Why does it say b'damu v'mayim lomali linikr? So let's look at the psukim to see how that would work. It says that tzibur achai yikach oitza v'es eitzeres v'shnia telas v'os eizov v'tol oisai v'es tzibur achaya b'hem. Why does it have to repeat again b'dam tzibur ashchut al mayim chayim if it just said a moment ago before that there's a klicheres al mayim chayim? So since it repeated again dam and mayim, it tells you that not only does it need to be dam and mayim, it also needs to be nikr. Zok to Gemara, what about Rabbanan? Rabbanan, because of Rachmana v'Tobel Bahem, I would never have known that you need to both mix together. Havamina hailuchudei v'hailuchudei. I would have thought that you dip it into the blood alone and the water alone. How do I know that they need to be mixed together? Therefore, kodev Rachmana v'dam v'mayim la'arban, but I still don't know that the dam needs to be nicker. So Rabbi Shmuel, how about Rabbi Shmuel? La'arban krachiniksiv. That they have to be mixed together, I know from a different pasuk. It says v'shachat es hatzipor ha'echos. It says in the earlier pasuk v'shachat es hatzipor ha'echos el klicheres al mayim chayim. That's how I know they have to be mixed, because you're shachting it in to a kos that already has mayim chayim in it. For Rabbanan, you wouldn't have a raya from there. It says imayahu havamina lishchet esamech lamana v'nen kitinu levridin ulakabel l'da. So let's look at the pasuk, how the Rabban would have used the pasuk. It says, I would have thought that you shech the tzipor right in front of the klicheres that is ma'im chaim. So shecht it right over that keli, but don't let its blood go into the keli. Squeeze the vriden, don't let the blood out. Shecht it right there over the keli that is ma'im chaim in it, and then release the blood in the second keli. So right there, I don't know la'arban, that's why I don't have those words extra. So nochamal inside lishchede samach lemana v'nin continue levridin ulakabel adam b'manachmina. Behechtes not. How could you prove that it has to be together? I hear. Maybe you know from here now that we have the extra psukim. From Mashmalon that you have to mix the blood together. So therefore, according to the Rabbanon, you don't have a pasuk to tell you that the dam tzipor has to be nicker. Break the ben yayada. There's a mitzvah that we're all very familiar with that also needs re'iyah. The bride to give the conclusive list. Shloisha trichim sheyiru. What mitzvah do we all know? Do we all know you have to be able to see? That's right. What does it say? Urisa Moisai. So how come it's not listed over here? Urisa Moisai. You were thinking that, but you didn't verbalize it. Urisa Moisai. That's what the Ben Yoyada asks. Zok the Ben Yoyada? No, because he knew you would. He knew you would. Zok the Ben Yoyada. The mitzvah of the main mitzvah of tzitzis is not to see it. It's to be malbish it. It's not even to make it. The mitzvah is to wear it, not to see it. It doesn't say you have to see it. What does it say? Is it a mitzvah to see something? Is it a mitzvah to make it? No, but there's no specific mitzvah to go see the moon. It doesn't say you're Isa Meshalavana. Daf is Zaynach, but there's no mitzvah. There's mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. That could be at night. Here it is a Isa Moisai. But because that's it's a din in Levisha. That's what the Gemara says. But I'm sorry. I don't think there's a mitzvah riyah. It's one of the Tanoim, how he passes on it. But it doesn't say anywhere in Torah there's a mitzvah to look at a nega. So this actually spins off into a huge shaila. Are you supposed to let your tzitzis stick out? So al pi Kabbalah, there are shitas, I think from the Arizal, that the talis gadol, your talis you're supposed to have outside, but your talis cotton is supposed to be on the inside, and you shouldn't even have your tzitzis sticking out. There are those who hold the bedafka, you're not supposed to show your tzitzis. Although the Mishnah Berurah says, avada, you should show your tzitzis. The Mishnah Berurah says, if you get a gift from a king, he buys you a beautiful gift, are you not going to wear it when you see him? So if you have a gift of tzitzis, avada, you have to show off your tzitzis. Okay, Gavalti. But Chassidim, they do that, Taka. Yeah. Moti, you did that for Chaim. I got a beautiful gift of talent, so I wear a Taka. It's all the same. Without Torah, that's right. Shkoyach. Moti bought me a beautiful new talent. He told me, give me your aktura, I want to give it into fix up. So I took it off, I gave it to him, and Taka gave it back to me. But with a naya talis connected to it. Thank you very much. Kezok Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. Hikdim offer l'mayim. So the pashtus is, like we learned in our Mishnah, you fill up the kois of klicheres with mayim from the kiyar, and then you put the earth into it. Well, what if you put the earth in the keli first, and then you put the water in? The halacha is that the Tanakama possible. For Rab Shimon Machshir, Rab Shimon knows it would be kosher anyway. My time with Rab Shimon. What's the reason why Rab Shimon is Machshir? Because the pshat in the pasuk is that you got to put the water in first. Zok the Gemara, the Chsibit says in the pasuk, V'lakhu latome, and this is a pasuk that's talking about Para Aduma. We're going to see that there's a parallel from Para Aduma to Sotah. It says in the pasuk, V'lakhu latome me'afar sreifas hachatas. You take with a tome from the afar sreifas hachatas. The Tanya we learned. Rab Shimon, v'chi afaru, you're taking earth to spritz on the tome. V'aloi eferhu, it's ashes that you take. It's the ashes of the paraduma. Shina akasav b'mashmoi. The Torah used the word afar, even though we're talking about efer, lodun hu menu gzeir shava, to compare it to Sotah. The Torah is trying to tell us, compare the efer paraduma to the afar of the Sotah. Nemer kan afar by paraduma. Well, nemer lahalon afar by Sotah. Ma lahalon afar al gabi mayim. Just like by the Sotah, the offer is on the water. Afkan, so to here, offer al gabe mayim, the earth goes on the water. I'm sorry? I hear. So let's see. Mal al offer al gabe mayim, afkan offer al gabe mayim. Uma kan hiktim offer lamayim kosher. Just like by Sotah, if you put the mayim first, if you put the offer first, and then the mayim is kosher, ap lalon by paradum as well, hiktim offer the mayim kosher. The hasaminol. How do you know? How do you know b'chalal that if you're maktim mayim? I'm sorry, I'm punkt verkehrt. Umakan by paraduma. Just like by paraduma, we know if you put the offer first and then the mayim is kosher. So too by Sotah, if you put the offer in and then the mayim, it's also kosher. How do you know that by paraduma? It says two pesukim by the parasha paraduma. Siv olav. So let's see the lashon pasuk inside. It says v'lakhu latame me'afar sreifas hachatos v'nosan olav mayim chaim el keli. It's masha v'nafar olav on top of the offer, on top of the afer, you put the water. So that would be masha that the afer is first. Alma afer bereisha. If you're pouring the water on the afer, then obviously you're putting in the afer first. But it also says mayim chaim el keli, meaning the mayim chaim has got to be on the keli directly, and then the offer goes on top of it. Alma mayim bereisha. So we have what seems to be contradictory psukim. Either way it works. And therefore, using the Gzeir Shava, we'll say that by Sotah as well, it works either way. But the Rabbanon held that it would be possible if you put the earth in first. Rabbanon el keli dafka. You have to put the water in the keli first, b'dafka. So why does it say olav? Why does it say olav? Olav is masha, you put the water on top of the earth or on top of the afer. So to tell you that after you put the afer on the water, you should mix it so the water should come on top of the afer as well. Maybe say punkt verkehrt. Maybe you put the earth in first, that's dafka, you put the water on top of it. And El Kelly tells you shetei chayusim b'chli. Chayusim b'chli means you have to shep directly with this keli from the ma'ayin. You can't take with some other keli from the ma'ayin and pour it into this keli. Rather, you have to take directly from the ma'ayin in this keli. So tomorrow, no, that's not a mistaber to say. Mamatini b'chol makoim machshir l'mayla. Normally, you always put the machshir on top of the water. That's normally how it's done. You put the machshir on top. Zok Rashi Mamatini b'chamakim by Sotah, the machshir is l'mayla, the offer is machshir the water to be boideker. The chidam tzibah shom mitzayra, the machshir the mayim lazah, the dam goes on top of the water. Afkan by paraduma machshir l'mayla. So that's the machloikis. How do you learn paraduma? Do you learn that bedavke the water has to go in first, or do you learn that it doesn't matter? So Fregt Chaim, once you're learning it, why don't you bring a ride that Efer is offer? So let's see what Tosfos says over here. Let's see what Tosfos says over here. Shina kasev mashmoy tema v'chi mipnei kach shina v'amar beher kizadam l'kach shina aliba de beisilo l'lamed she'efer nikra offer. We learned earlier that Basil holds Aper is Nikri Upper, exactly like what you said. The Makar of Basil, that Aper is called Upper, is actually from Taraduma. Maybe you could learn 2 halachas from there, even according to Basil. So Basil is masking to your limud. Okay, Gabaltik, we'll stop here, and Bez Hashem will be Mamshech tomorrow before Mincha. Which Gemara? I skipped the Gemara. Oy vey, you should have stopped me right away. No, you didn't. The boy minei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera. Gedoyla umadechet es hamayim. Right. I remember I told you about the bird, how big the bird has to be. I totally forgot about it. What if you have a very big bird? Umadechet es hamayim. There's so much blood that if anything, it's gonna overpower the water, the revis of water. Or katana, you had a small bird. Even the revis water will dilute it. Now what's halacha? Omer Leir, Abzayr told Rabbi Yirmiyah, what type of question is that? Don't go out of the bounds of the halacha. There's a specific type of bird that you're supposed to use for the mitzvah. The Rabbanan said, what type of bird are you supposed to use for mitzvah? Davkar a tzipor dror, which we know has a specific size. There's no tzipor dror that's big enough that its dam would overrule the water. And there is no tzipor dror that's so small that a revis of water will dilute it. Can I say ein muktem u'ucher b'toyra? Okay, shkoyach. Have a wonderful day.